It's just getting tougher and tougher for Montreal as Jake Evans is forcing Habs management into an impossible decision as his trade value has never been higher, but also his negotiation strength for his free agent contract coming this offseason has also never been stronger. This guy could demand money that Montreal may not even be able to pay. There is a bunch of stuff we have to dive into today about Jake Evans' contract future, but it's not just him, Jesse. His fourth line mates have been amazing as well, with Joel Armia also being a free agent and his name circulating in trade talks. Some thoughts on that, plus a final note on Alex Carrier and some incredible impact and a great quote that he said, all coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. But guys, gonna ask you this, haven't asked in a while, if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button. We've been getting a ton of new viewers to the channel, and if you're one of the new viewers, one of the 5, 6, 7,000 new viewers every single day, and you're not part of the 50% that subscribe, it's completely free. We have daily Habs content all season long. You won't regret it, I promise. Let's get right into this video, Jesse. I want to start with Alex Carrier. This guy has been unbelievable. Check this out. Coming from Canadiens News on X, as a Habs so far, he's played 5 games. He has 4 assists. He has 4 points. He has 4 block shots. He's a +3. He's playing 19 minutes a night. Not to mention, Jesse, the fact that Montreal, in his time here, are 4-1, with the only loss being that collapse to Columbus. And he had a great quote saying, "The ambiance changes everything. When I arrived here, I found a big difference from where I was before. You see it on the ice. The guys play for one another. We work together. It's not always easy, but we play for each other, and it shows on the ice." What are your thoughts on his impact so far in Montreal? Because I honestly think somehow it's still understated by Habs fans.
It really is. You know, like coming into very recently, Nick Suzuki was the only player on the Habs with a positive plus or minus. The fact that Alex Carrier comes in right away is now one of those players with the +3 on the team. But not only his impact of helping the team, but then what he then does as the kind of that carryover effect, along with Guhle, finally seeing him on his natural side. You know, he's able to kind of contribute, get on the score sheet a little bit more, which we kind of suspected. A little bit more of an offensive role for him there. You know, so Guhle really deserves it. I'm just a fan of anybody who's going to make my boy, you know, Guhle's life easier right now, because he really deserves it. And that's what Alex Carrier is doing. Like, it's his presence, what he's doing on the ice, but it's also a lot of his decision making. Like, for sure, they were so key to get the right fit. And as we talked about on the show, really on point before this happened, like a vet, right-handed, who can skate. You know, when Alex Carrier definitely, you know, even though the size, we weren't quite sure, he's just fit the bill because he's got a lot of fight in him right now. But it's how he's playing the game. It's making those right decisions, Josh, where we want to see Barron succeed, but just often Barron would make those risky plays with the puck where it's like the Montreal Canadiens are saying, like, we want to play that simpler game. Even if we have to work as a 5-man unit, when it's the right time, we're just going to get that puck in deep. Alex Carrier is somebody who understands those type of decisions on the ice. So it's not a coincidence. See, like, we're having more consistency right now, whereas Barron obviously was much more inconsistent play coming from that experience. And again, Alex Carrier, we're seeing a tradition right now of, you know, new Habs players not afraid to kind of boast about how they're liking it in Montreal, how they kind of feel part of the team and everything else. So Alex Carrier continuing to throw a little bit of shade right now, Josh.
A little bit, you know. Don't go look at Justin Barron's stats in Nashville if you really want to see him succeed. He's not been doing great so far, but I have full faith in Barron that he can do something, hopefully somewhere else. Although I think a lot of you are probably going to disagree. I just want to see him succeed somewhere else, even if it's not Montreal. His last game he played under 10 minutes. Just saying. But right now, Alex Carrier, little bit of shade, but also I think more so love than anything for Montreal. Jesse, he's made an amazing impact to this team. Leave some love for our boy Carrier down below, because he's been helping carry this team to wins. That was horrible. I'm sorry. Let's move on to the next topic. And there's a bunch of talk we got to do on the fourth line. And Heineman, we might get into him. I'm not even sure, but I know for a fact we got to start with Joel Armia, because two of these guys on the fourth line, Jesse, I will say it right now, the best fourth line in the NHL. They lead all fourth lines in the NHL in goals by like a large margin. I think it's like 6 or 7 goals more than the next closest fourth line. Not to mention two of the guys who are the top guys in the penalty kill. But when we're talking about Joel Armia, I know we'll get into Jake Evans in a bit, but this guy's name is one that's kind of flying under the radar in terms of what we should do long term with him, because he is also a free agent at the end of the season. But he's on pace to also shatter his career high in points. His career high in points, I believe it's like 30 or 33. It's in the low to mid 30s at the very least. He has never cracked 40 points in a season, and he's on pace for 41. Will that continue? I'm not sure, but he's been playing some incredible hockey as of late, Jesse. As I bring up, wait, where is it? There it is. His last 5 games, he has 5 points and 2 goals. Right now, Joel Armia has been on a tear. I'm seeing some Habs fans already start to say to re-sign him, and I don't necessarily agree. I think Armia can be one of those guys that you can replace with a free agent in the off season, right? You don't want to fall in love with these third, fourth line guys. However, just seeing him and Evans in the penalty kill makes this maybe a bit of a tougher decision for management as to whether to let both of them go, keep one, or, well, what do you think about Armia specifically?
Well, for Armia, even though he's contributing to the team, goal and assist last night he's still he needs to be traded. He will be traded at this deadline. He does have value for some teams as well, just because, Josh, don't you feel like he's kind of still part of that? This team's still turning that corner. We're still kind of progressing, and it's really making those ways for those young guys in the bottom six to kind of get those opportunities. As we see, is so important. We know the results are important with the Habs now. He's contributing, but, we got guys like Beck. We got Kaiden. Well, obviously, we'll kind of get into that more, the implications of all those young guys in a minute, right? But like Armia, he's doing well. Like, he kind of found his way. There was a little bit of some rough patches, but he's found his way to be a solid NHLer. And I feel like he'll be able to continue that, just not in Montreal after this season.
I think like the big thing here, as we're going to get into with Evans, is he's really improving his trade stock. Not to mention he'll play in the Four Nations Cup with Team Finland alongside Patrick Laine, where I think his trade stock will probably go up even more because those those tall guys. I mean, he's like 6'3", 6'4", right? He's a big guy. He's strong, especially on the puck. We see that every single night. The question with him has always been, does he give it his all every single night? Right now, that's been no question this season for Montreal, and in the second half of last year. He's been on a tear the past calendar year, basically. So right now, his trade stock's at the highest that we've ever seen it. Now, will he get a first? No, he's almost certainly not going to. But Jesse, you got to think that again, maybe just a quick thought on this, because we'll talk a lot about the same stuff with Evans, but a playoff team is looking at a big guy like this who can play 15 minutes a night, can play your penalty kill, and play a great possession game on that third, fourth line. Who's not going to want that? And that's what makes me think there's going to be a bidding war, not just for him, but for a lot of Habs players.
Yoel Armia is so good on the penalty kill, and some team is going to rightfully value that, knowing that they're going to need that to win. In the right conditions on a deep team, Yoel Armia, who really kind of knows his role now, can be very effective. Obviously has that offensive part of his game, which is always kind of lying dormant, but we know it's there. He'll still definitely chip in all the same. So absolutely, he's going to be very valuable, and hopefully serve another team very, very well.
Yeah, I think so too. And what better way to transition into his line mate? Not Emil Heineman, though I do have some Emil Heineman stuff. But we can talk about that another day. It's Jake Evans. I'm going to roll the highlights again because he has been on a ridiculous tear right now. I mean, he has goals in 5 straight games. He has points in 6 straight. He has 8 points in his last 6 games. This guy, I don't know what got into him, but all these shots look very similar. He's scoring on breakaways. Yes, people are saying his shooting percentage is due to regress somewhat, but if you watch those clips, I mean, yeah, he's sniping it, but it's not like these goals are like impossible angle bank shots. This dude is just straight putting it top cheese, and that is what it is. And if we take a look at some stuff here, we got a lot of articles talking about this, Jesse. We got this article from Corinne Haynes. These are all going to be linked down below. I just got the headlines. Canadiens trading Evans would be short-sighted. Soon the Montreal Canadiens will have to decide what to do with Evans. They'll need to consider the whole picture. And then this article by Ryan Spoor. Evans is at risk of pricing himself out of the Canadiens' long-term plans because of how good he's playing and the kind of contract he may garner in free agency. And then we also got this from Nate Duffett. 2024 year in review, Evans has reached another gear and his bank account. He has been so good as of late with 5 goals, 3 assists, all primary in his last 6 games, 57.5% on the dot, plus 9 in his last 6 games, playing 15 minutes time on ice per game, still among the top in the league on the penalty kill. And if I just pop up his stats again, full screen this season, on pace to shatter his career high in goals and assists. Jesse, here it comes down to this. I know we've been talking about how we want him extended. I completely agree. But doesn't it feel like day after day, the price that he would get in free agency is just climbing? At what point will it be too much for Montreal to match? Do you think we might actually be creeping into that territory?
There's some pros and cons here. We know that Kent Hughes wants to keep Jake Evans, but Kent Hughes has a certain number in his mind. And as we know with him, he's just not going to go over that. So it's really going to kind of depend here on what Evans is. He kind of want to take a little bit more of a team-friendly deal because that seems to be the only way. While Kent Hughes really likes his player, he's going to know we still got a lot of contracts still in the book. We're still paying for Carey Price. Believe me, Kent Hughes is going to be very careful before doling out, especially longer-term deals. Like with that, with your top 6, absolutely those longer-term deals, yeah, it makes sense. You're securing the core of your team. We see a lot of fluidity in the bottom 6. Like the pros and cons, we'll get into that. Like, the pros of keeping him is like, you don't want to have like constantly changing your bottom 6. We see like teams like the Leafs, they seem to change, and often with like their defense, their bottom pairings, their bottom 6 is changing, which stops the team from having chemistry and cohesion, which is a big, thing of them not being able to win when it really matters the most. That being said, it's like you can't overpay. So that's like that fine line. And for me, like, signing Jake Evans, I'm happy, but there's a certain number where it becomes too high. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Even though I love that player, even though it's only him and Nick Suzuki that we have like locked down as, real kind of centers for this team. Like there's some serious things of like him, keeping over here, some serious positives. But like with those young guys coming up, Xhekaj, Beck, him having a very good year, that factors all into this call. Xhekaj absolutely being lights out. Like this is leverage that's going to get Hughes in that direction. Like Josh, let's get down to the brass tacks. Like, what's your number? What's the number you're not going over? What's the year limit you're not going over for Kent Hughes if you're in that position?
Man, it's tough because you can't fall in love with these bottom six guys too much. Even though Jake Evans is straight up one of my favorite hockey players I think I've ever watched. Like, I love him so much. But as a team, right? Like, objectively, you can replace Jake Evans for like 3/4 of his value for a much lower number than he'll probably get. Contract year players are a real thing. This is his contract year. Players often play up to their contract year and start to dip after. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Jake Evans because his career arc right now is like a little delayed, right? So he still could have a nice peak for 4 or 5 years after this. But I don't know, Jesse, like when you're looking at your bottom six guys, I don't want a bottom six guy being paid over $4 million long term. Like that's just not what I want. And I don't see him progressing into a top six guy. I love Jake Evans. I think he's an incredibly important piece to this team. When you look at similar style of defensive players, like the one I mentioned before is Yakov Trenin in Minnesota, different style kind of, but he still is more defense first, a little more physical, but he got 3.5 over 3 years and people thought it was an overpay, right? So, Jake Evans is more valuable than Trenin in my mind, but $4 million is kind of that number that I'm definitely not going over. But even then, for a guy that if you're pegging him as your bottom six guy for the next 3-4 seasons, is that even too much? Cap's going up, so I think that's my number, Jesse. 3-4 years at $4 million. But even then, I'm a little iffy on it because I'm afraid other teams are going to offer him more than that. I don't know if they will, but like that's my line. And even then, I'm not sold that that's actually a smart business move long term.
Well, that's just exactly it. Honestly, when in my notes, I have the same thing. Like, like $4 million at 4 years is probably the max, but like ideally, that's where the whole problem comes in. Because if I'm Kent Hughes, I want to sign him to 3 years. Yeah. You know that he's going to want more than that. So here, kind of in lies the problem. Probably a greater likelihood of Jakey Boy Evans walking into that free agency because of that factor is more going to be the term, which is really the thing there. There's a solid argument to give him that 4-year deal. I get it. But yeah, it starts to become a little bit rich, even though I like everything he's bringing, even though we know that results matter that much more for the Montreal Canadiens. And I would say Jeff Gordon, especially, we don't talk about this enough on the show. Like this guy hates losing. Yeah. Like Jake, like he's going to want to pay. He's going to be tempted. Exactly. Like we want the results. That is important. So that's going to factor into all this as well. You just got to hope that the team and Kent Hughes, rather Jake Evans can come together on something that works for both of them, because it seems like that's the only way that this is going to come together.
Hope we get a little discount from him too, right? Hopefully he resigns. But again, Jesse, if it's looking like, if they're hearing like, through the grapevine that teams are going to be willing to offer him that $4 million or more, something Montreal's not willing to do, you might hear more trade rumors, right? Teams are going to be desperate to trade for him as well. And if you think you might just get priced out, you might have to move him. This is why it's an impossible decision. I still don't know what I want to do. In an ideal world, between 3 and 3.5 million for 3 to 4 years, like that would be what I'm happy with paying, right? If he comes in at 3.25 for 4 years, I'm thrilled. That's perfect, right? Yeah. But what I fear is that he's going to be priced up a little more. Let us know your guys' thoughts. What's your number for Jake Evans? How many years? And do you think he'll get priced out of Montreal? And if he does, would you trade him? There's so much to talk about in this situation, but we only got a certain amount of time in this video, so that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. But if you enjoyed, hit the subscribe button down below. If you made it to this point in the video, almost 14 minutes in, and you enjoyed, we got daily content just like this. If you hit the button, you won't regret it. I promise. I'm Josh Gosse alongside my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.